Hello, and welcome to the last week of Mythology of Heroes and Villains. Obviously, this week we're going to talk a little bit about the video you're going to watch, and then the assignment that I am expecting from you, and then we'll have a little bit of overall view of the course. The video you're watching is from NCIS, which stands for Naval Criminal Investigative Service. It's the longest running show currently still on television. Scripted show, of course. There's reality shows that last longer on American television. I should also clarify. Um, it is also the most watched scripted show in the world. Millions of people tune in every week to see a uniquely American take on a hero, dogged crime fighters who can solve any mystery, bring any criminal to justice, and usually do it looking very good. This is the cast from the first season. Obviously, a show this long running has had many cast changes. Here's another cast from the middle seasons. This is one the cast has lasted the longest. Um, and then, of course, here's the same cast from the most recent season. The interesting thing about this show is I'm not particularly a fan of it. I think it's just fine. It's entertaining, but it epitomizes so many points of this American myth that good-looking people who can work quickly, smash through any barrier, discover any clue and solve any crime in a very short period of time. And this is such a important myth for our people because we often feel that we're out of control, that the world is um, often happen things often happen for no good reason, and these sorts of crime dramas help give us a reason. Every crime, every mystery can be solved. It makes sense. You can often, as an audience member, guess what's going on as soon as, if not sooner than the people on the screen. And then they can always end with a little bit of a joke, a little bit of a laugh, and go on with justice righted. Everyone in this show over the years shows various heroic qualities. They sacrifice their personal lives, they sacrifice their health. Sometimes a few of them have sacrificed their lives, all in order to bring justice to the world because justice is something that we all want to believe in. The reason I wanted you to see the show is I want to see the origins of how we spread this feeling to everyone and maybe you should consider a little bit about what this kind of show and shows like it. We are big fans of crime drama, especially in the United States. Say about who we are as a culture, what we're looking for, what some of our anxieties are, and what we want to see in our heroes. The assignment is twofold. It's a research paper, and obviously, it's going to be about 1,200 and 1,500 words long. That is around 5 to 7 to 8 pages long, and it's going to be an MOA format. Um, Obviously, and then there's also a research presentation. I don't want you to sweat the research presentation too much. Obviously, somebody's already submitted it. This is just to be a way to, hopefully in a more interesting way, explain to me as if I were your student concepts that you're exploring in your research paper. So this is a more informal, more direct way of telling me what you've studied and what you've put together for the paper. If you have questions about MOA format, I'm a huge fan of the Purdue Online Writing Lab. This is in your syllabus as the source book you should look at. Gives you all the information you need for MOA formatting style. You've obviously used this or certain online resources because most of you have been citing in MOA style for your analytic papers. Make sure you understand the concept of in-text citations and why they work. The main thing to be aware of with in-text citations, as explains here, is to indicate for me as quickly as possible from uh, so that I can look at a works cited page and see who you're discussing. So you want to make certain that your works cited matches up to your in-text citation. So if you're citing from Wordsworth here, and here's an example of the Wordsworth citation at the top of the screen, from the in text, you want me to be able to see Wordsworth because it will line up here, and that way I can quickly look at your works cited, see that this is where you're coming from, and move on from there. If you do not have an author that you can cite, then you want to cite from either title of the book or title of the article. What you don't want to do is cite from the publisher. Oxford, it doesn't belong in the in-text citation, because at that point I'm going to ask you if you actually have a reliable source to cite. The reason page numbers are listed here is several books have page numbers to look at. If it's an online source, you do not need page numbers, but in some cases, some online sites will give you such information. It's better play by ear. I'm also a big fan of using the text itself to cite as opposed to using the parenthetical citation. Parenthetical citations are just there in case you were not able to give me some of this information in the actual sentence itself. If you have the citation in the sentence, for example, as words were stated in romantic poetry, you, as you can see here, do not need to put the same information at the end of the citation, parenthetical citation. Here is an example of what an MOA sample paper looks like. You're going to want your name, my name, class number, the date. There are boxes here to indicate what all these for. Remember to give yourself a title. Titles are another way to explain to me what you're talking about. So if you have an idea for for a research paper about, for example, Heracles and why he is both a hero and a villain at various times, you would say Heracles from villain to hero to villain to hero. And that would give me a short understanding of what it is you're examining, so that when you bring that up in more clear focus for your thesis statement, I'm already primed to understand what you're talking about. Of course, there are many other places here for you to get specific examples. Electronic sources is a great place to reference if you have, for example, articles from online or YouTube videos or whatever else or Netflix videos that you want to cite. Remember, if you are citing from a series or a television series or a series you're watching on Netflix, to look up the actual citation for a Netflix series and cite that primary text as well as any supplementary texts. For presentations, you can do this in multiple ways. You can use the site prezi.com, which is an online site. It works if you've ever used PowerPoint to create a presentation. This is intuitive. It's easy. I used to be a big fan of Prezi. They have now changed a lot of their pricing structures so that you only get the basic functionality for free. So you may want to consider whether you want to keep using it. However, it is a quick and easy, and it usually makes good looking presentations. Another thing I am a fan of is the use of Google Drive presentations. Again, this is quick and easy. This is a student in another class who put together a presentation quickly. Again, think of this as if a presentation you would give in front of class, but try to make it visually interesting. You don't want to just do with bullet points. You also want to have visual information that will help explain and put context for some of these episodes. If you have any questions specifically about the presentations or the papers, by all means, please ask them in email in the group for general questions for me up here. Or I will do my best to be online. Next week is going to be a little odd for scheduling, but I'll do my best to be online for my online office hours. And if you ever contact me, say you want to talk to me through online office hours, I'll make a point to be there for those. Let's talk about the class in general. The point of this class wasn't specifically talk about mythology. For example, the Greek myths here of Heracles wearing the skin of the Nemean lion fighting the Hydra. Or even about Norse myths where we have pictures here of Thor fighting various opponents, giant opponents, holding Mjolnir and being carried by his goats. We're not even necessarily talking about more recent myths like Joan of Arc from the Middle Ages, or even political myths about Lincoln. What we're doing is trying to talk about all of these together. We're trying to talk about the fact that mythology changes over time. It's not always great and grand stories about demigods or heroes. It is about the people we exemplify as moral, ethical standards for our civilization, even if those standards are questionable, even if those standards can sometimes be buried underneath layers of complication or distrust or confusion. What they are supposed to do is give us a story to talk about who we think we should be and how we think moral and ethical struggles should be fought. And we do this in a variety of ways. Sometimes they're fighting monsters, sometimes they're fighting villains, sometimes they are fighting something more abstract, as Lincoln here, trying to make certain there are democracy is preserved and we are fighting to have a great nation despite the Civil War. These are all concepts that can be battled against and argued against in our mythologies. We have the tendency to mythologize all sorts of people. For example, soldiers and firefighters, police officers, nurses, doctors. And one of the things that's important, and hopefully this study of mythology will teach you, is these are people. One of the things about shows like Saving Private Ryan or in the television shows I've been showing you and many books is that they try to make humanize these people. Jessica Jones, as many people have pointed out, may not be the greatest or nicest person, but in that she becomes more realistic. She's not a shining standard. She is somebody you might meet, somebody you might know. Just like Saving Private Ryan, the captain and Private Ryan here are not necessarily always good. They're not always bad. They're not always anything. They are people who struggle with their questions. When we pay attention to these struggles, when we look at these complications, our mythology becomes richer and deeper, and I think is better at teaching us things and helping us deal with these questions in our own lives. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the bright, shiny myth. I'm a big fan of comic books, as you have probably seen from the references I make. And one of the reasons is it turns some of these complex issues into bright, four-color, ease problems that can be easily solved with a fist or a lasso or moving really fast. And by turning things into this kind of large, over-the-top scale, we can again render questions that are really hard to ask. If you have the power that and people can't resist you, how do you use it ethically? If you know something and you cannot stop trying to understand things, how do you try to turn that into a way to help others? And Marvel, which is known a little bit for trying to make their characters more human and more flawed, has the same thing. They're still bright, shining figures. No one is as good as Captain America. No one is as smart as Tony Stark. And yet they always fight to do what's right, even if they make mistakes. And in Marvel, they make mistakes a lot more often. But they are also still struggling with these concepts. How are we going to be heroes? Even if it's in our own small ways, even if it's the kind of heroism that just means your children look up to you, or your friends can rely on you, or your family respects you. Hopefully, these questions are ones that you'll be able to ponder and enjoy as you go through the mythology of a perfect Christmas or other winter holiday, whatever you celebrate, and through the rest of your life. Again, learning doesn't stop here, learning goes on forever. And asking these questions about not just mythology, but any story you interact with is probably a good thing. Thanks for being a great class. It was my honor and pleasure to teach you, and I look forward to your final papers.